Welcome to the Ghost Story Grandma channel. Today, Grandma will bring you a mysterious and eerie tale. Get ready for it. Disturbing true au pair horror stories. Mia took a job as an au pair at the Bennett's house, a large home in the suburbs. The family needed someone to look after Noah, their 6-year-old son, while his parents were constantly busy. Everything seemed normal at first, but from the very first day, Mia felt that something was off. Not because of the way Noah's parents acted, but because of the house itself. Noah was a quiet child. He didn't talk much, just observed. When he first met Mia, he only stared at her for a long moment before turning away. Mia didn't think much of it. Kids had their own ways of getting used to new people. However, on the very first night in the Bennett's home, she realized that Noah's silence wasn't just his personality. Mia woke up in the middle of the night, feeling restless. There was no strange noise. Everything around her was still dark and quiet. She tried to close her eyes again, but then sensed something was wrong. Her bedroom door was slightly open. She had closed it when she went to bed. She didn't get up right away. She lay still, staring at the door. There was no one there, just the darkness filling the hallway outside. She tried to remember if she had forgotten to lock the door. A cold shiver ran down her spine, but she reassured herself it was probably just a draft from the window. The next morning, Mia went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Noah was already sitting at the table, quietly staring out the window. She tried to make conversation, but he only responded with a small nod. When she placed a plate of food in front of him, he whispered something very softly, just enough for her to hear, but not clearly. She asked him to repeat. Noah looked at her and spoke again, this time more clearly. Mia didn't react immediately. His words didn't sound like a joke. All day, Mia couldn't shake Noah's words from her mind. She tried asking Elena, Noah's mother, about him, but Elena only gave a dismissive smile, saying that children often had wild imaginations. Mia didn't press further, but she didn't think Noah was just imagining things. On the second night, Mia carefully checked her door before going to bed. She made sure it was locked. She woke up around 3 a.m. The uneasy feeling returned. She couldn't explain it, but something made her open her eyes. The door was still closed. She felt slightly relieved, but then she heard it, a very faint sound coming from the hallway. Footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps. Mia didn't move. She listened. The sound wasn't loud, but it was clear. Someone was walking down the hallway. She told herself it could be one of the Bennetts. But there was something strange about the footsteps. They were too light, almost soundless, yet just enough for her to notice. Then, they stopped, right outside her door. Mia tensed, waiting. Nothing happened for a few seconds. But then, the doorknob turned slightly. She stared at the door. It didn't open. The only sound was the faint metal clicking, as if someone was trying to turn the knob quietly, without making a noise. Mia didn't move. She didn't speak. She just lay there, listening. A minute passed. The door remained closed. The footsteps started again, slower this time, as if whoever was outside was stepping back. Mia didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When the morning came, she immediately checked the hallway for any signs of someone standing there. But the floor looked undisturbed. Everything was as it had been. When she went downstairs, Noah was already at the table, just like the previous morning. But this time, he wasn't staring out the window. He was staring directly at Mia. She walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. Noah looked up at her for a long moment. Then he whispered something just low enough for only her to hear. Noah whispered a single sentence. Mia stopped, trying to make sure she had heard correctly. She lowered herself to his level, her voice barely above a whisper. Noah didn't repeat himself. He just stayed silent, continuing to watch her. His gaze made Mia uneasy. She didn't know how to respond. The whole day, she kept an eye on Noah. He didn't act strange. Mia told herself it was just a random comment. But when she was putting Noah to bed that night, he suddenly grabbed her wrist. She didn't pull away immediately. Noah opened his mouth as if to say something, but didn't. He just looked at her for a moment longer, then let go. Mia helped him tuck into bed, then turned off the light and stepped out. She left the door slightly open, letting the hallway light seep in. As she walked back to her room, Noah's door suddenly shut. Mia stopped instantly. She turned around and placed her hand on the doorknob, opening it again. Noah was still in bed, the blanket pulled up to his chest. She stood in the doorway, saying nothing. He didn't react. Mia left the door open wider than before. She returned to her room, checked her door carefully, and turned off the lights. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't sleep. The silence felt too heavy. Then there was a knock. Not loud, not urgent, just a soft tap. Mia didn't move. She didn't want to open her eyes. A second knock, still gentle. No rush, no force. A third knock, even slower. Mia opened her eyes. The room was completely dark. She turned her head toward the door. There was no one there. She waited, listening. Nothing else. She sat up and got out of bed. She didn't turn on the light. Her hand reached for the doorknob, turning it slightly. It was still locked. She slowly pressed her ear against the door. Silence. Mia stood like that for a moment before stepping back and returning to bed. In the morning, she checked the door. Still locked. She went downstairs. Noah was already there. This time, he wasn't staring out the window or at her. He just sat there, hands resting on the table, eyes downcast. Mia pulled out a chair and sat across from him. Noah spoke first. She didn't understand what he meant. But when she looked into his eyes, she realized Noah wasn't trying to make her understand. He was simply stating a fact. Noah lowered his gaze, saying nothing more. Mia waited a moment before standing up, preparing breakfast as usual. Everything in the kitchen remained quiet, just like every other morning. But inside her, nothing felt the same. While cleaning up, she glanced toward the hallway. Noah's door was still open. She wasn't sure who had knocked on her door the previous night, but now it didn't matter anymore. Noah left the table first. He walked outside, standing beneath a tree. Mia watched him from the window. He wasn't playing like he usually did. She wiped her hands and stepped outside. He didn't turn around as she approached. Mia stood beside Noah, looking in the same direction as him. There was nothing there, just the fence and the empty road beyond. Then Noah suddenly spoke. Just one sentence, no explanation. Mia didn't know how to react. She knelt to his level, but he had already turned away. The entire day passed in an eerie silence. That evening, Mia prepared Noah for bed. He didn't grab her wrist this time, just quietly climbed under the covers. She stood there for a moment before turning off the light. Back in her room, she locked the door and turned off the lights. But this time, she didn't go to sleep. She sat at the edge of her bed, eyes fixed on the door. The footsteps came at the same time as the night before. Not fast, not slow. But this time, they didn't stop outside her door. They continued, fading into the distance at the end of the hallway. Mia opened the door as soon as the sound disappeared. The hallway was empty. She looked toward Noah's room. The door was still shut. She looked further down the hall, where the footsteps had vanished. Nothing. Mia returned to her room, locked the door, and lay down.